Okay, hello and welcome to the Parsha class. This week's Parsha is called Eikev. It's relatively short, but not by much. And there's just a lot in it. These first few parshiot of the last book of the Torah of Devarim. So they start off with a long introduction about how important it is to do mitzvot. And then the next few parshiot are going to be, the actual mitzvot, like in great detail, and sometimes in great detail, sometimes hardly any detail, honestly. And then the last few parshiot of the Sefer Devarim, the book of Devarim, is Moshe's blessings and Moshe's a song, Ha'azinu. But we'll get to that when we get to that. Meanwhile, the very, very beginning of the Parsha, though, deals with a lot of the lessons we can learn from food, how important it is to be healthy, and how important it is to recognize that food comes from H-Shem and is given to us as a gift for us to use, and that we shouldn't be living to eat, we should be eating to live. I think I said that right. I'm not an expert in that field, but all of it is also the idea that we're supposed to focus on godliness as much as we're physical people and we have a physical world to live in. Somehow we're supposed to transform that into holiness. That is part of our mission in this life, and that's kind of where the Parsha takes us. There's discussion of the giving of the Ten Commandments, as we had last week. And then there's also the talk of the golden calf and its repercussions. So with no further ado, I think it's a good time to just dive right into our sources, if we can. And here's our sources for the week. And I sent this out in an email, the source sheet. If you did not get it, or if it's not working for you, let me know. I do like to know these things. Okay, I'll just point and laugh. No, I'm kidding. Obviously, try to fix whatever's wrong. All right, so let's start with the first parsha, the first verse in this parsha, which is unusual. There's an unusual word there, or it's used. It's not really an unusual word. It's just used very unusually. It says, "Vaya Eikev tishma'un." It says, if you will listen. Et hamishpatim, to the laws, ha'ele, to these laws, shmartem, and you're going to guard them, vasitem, and you're going to perform them, otam, v'shamar Hashem elokecha lecha, Hashem is going to protect for you. Because you guarded something, you were shomer, that's the root word of ushmartem, shamar, right? You were shomer, you guarded something, you're going to guard these mitzvot. So, as reward for that, shamar Hashem elokecha lecha, Hashem will guard you. Guard for you what? The brit, the promise, the covenant that he made with you, and the kindness, the kindness that he promised to your forefathers, which is basically an indication that he will bring us into the land of Israel, and we're going to be protected there as long as we perform the mitzvot and guard them. So far, so good. The difficulty in this verse is the word Eikev, which is actually the name of the Parsha. Eikev usually means heel. I think in previous years we talked about how the word Eikev can mean different things. It's Rashi says it's the small mitzvot, the theoretical easy mitzvot that we don't really care about enough because they're the kind we could squash with our heel, right? We just like step all over them and don't give them the seriousness that they deserve. So that's the idea of which mitzvot we're supposed to particularly do, and that's one opinion. The Oznaim LaTorah has a different issue, and we're going to actually I don't know. I don't know if it was just something I was just syncopated on, something I had on my mind. But throughout tonight's class, you'll find a lot of times there's going to be verses where they switch grammatically from singular to plural, from plural to singular, And it doesn't really make sense. We're talking about the same subject, the same object sometimes, and it turns from plural to singular or vice versa, as I just said. So all of that is worth discussing. What I'd like to point out here is that our verse, and you don't really hear it so much in English because English, at least American English, has a very unique thing amongst languages. It doesn't have a plural you. And I've mentioned this before, how I like how they do in the South when they say y'all, which is a plural you, right? It actually makes sense. And almost every language I've ever studied, pretty much every language I've ever studied, has a plural for you, and as does Hebrew. And it makes the translation much more important. And in this verse, especially if you look at the Hebrew, it makes a lot less sense, which begs to be interpreted. Well, it has to mean something. So take care. V'haya eikev tishme'un, right? The word if you will guard, if you will perform, right? Tishme'un, from the word shema, if you listen to these mitzvot, the word tishme'un is lashon rabim. It's plural. If y'all, let's use Southern talk, if y'all listen to the mitzvot and the laws, etc., then what's going to happen? Shamar Hashem Elokecha lecha, you singular. If you all listen to the mitzvot, Hashem will guard you, only you, one person. So what is it, plural or singular? Make up your mind, Torah. So there's Naim LaTorah, Rav Zalman Sorotskin is going to have an answer for us. God willing, we'll understand it. He says, first of all, V'haya Eikev Tishme'un Lashon Rabim, as I said, it's plural. V'chein v'shamartem v'asitem, and if you guard them and you will listen to them, if you will perform them, that's also with a mem at the end. That's a good indication that that's going to be plural. V'achar kach, and afterwards, Kol HaParsha Nemra b'Lashon Yachid. And then it says at the end of the parsha, in singular language, Shamar Hashem Elkecha lecha, you, ve'hafto, ve'rachacha, ve'erbecha. All lashon, all of these are when it ends with cha like that, it's usually singular. So what's happening? So he says, v'yesh lomar sheremes bezeh she'al yedei limud v'kiyum haTorah nasim b'nei Israel lechativa achat. When the Jewish people perform the mitzvot, they become singular. They become one. V'hakadosh Baruch Hu medaber alehem ke'el ish echad, and he speaks to the Jewish people as if they are one person. And you see this, by the way, in a lot of different places, and we're going to see this actually throughout the parsha, as I said. And the interesting thing is that it's an important thing to understand. We are all individual members of a unit, and that unit is treated like a one, like a singular unit, only when we deserve it and when we make that singular unit into a unit. Otherwise, what is the Jewish people? This is probably not the place for this big kind of question, but it's worth at least thinking about. Very often you'll have this question: what is Judaism? What is it? And depending on who you ask, some people will say, "Oh, I express my Jewishness by eating matzah balls or gefilte fish," right? Some people express their Jewishness by listening to "quote unquote" Jewish music. That's a whole big question in and of itself. What is Jewish music? Does that mean songs performed by Jews? So like Bob Dylan's music is Jewish music, or Billy Joel, or Drake? What makes Jewish music, right? I'm sorry if I'm outing any artists here. But or does it have to have a Jewish theme? Or what is a Jewish theme? Is Tikkun Olam, fixing the world? If that means cleaning the beach, is that a Jewish theme? Giving charity, is that somehow exclusively Jewish? These are all interesting questions worth mentioning. And I like what the Rav Zalman Sorotskin is saying here. He's saying, how you make a Jewish people united? What makes a Jewish people a Jewish people? Let's look back to his first words. He says, "She'al yedei limud v'kiyum haTorah," the study and the acceptance of the Torah. That's na'asim b'nei Yisrael l'chativa achat. That's what makes the Jewish people into one group. That's what unifies us. The only time, and I've mentioned this before, I'm sure, the only time in the entire history of the Jewish people where the Jewish people are called, or it's in Rashi actually, where he says, Ki ish echad belev echad, like we were one person with one heart, that was at Har Sinai, when we received the Torah. Receiving the Torah is what made us the Jewish people. Keeping the Torah is what makes us the Jewish people still, what unites us as a group. All right, so we're going to skip now. There's a lot of skipping we're going to be doing, obviously, or not so obviously. Either way, we're going to skip to chapter 8, verse 1. And there the verse says, the Torah says, again, this is Moshe speaking, Kol ha-mitzvah asher anochi mitzavacha hayom tishmerun la'asot. All the mitzvah that I command you today, you should guard. And this parsha is, I don't want to say repetitive, but it says kind of the same idea over and over again, but in different ways. And it's important, and there's a reason. This is a tactic that Moshe is using to inculcate into the Jewish people certain ideas. And repetition, as we know, is one of the things that works for us in terms of memory, in terms of understanding something. Right? If you recall back to the days when you were in school and your teacher said something, and you're just like, "What?" And your teacher said it again, but in different words. You're like, "What?" And the teacher said it again, but in new words. And you're like, "Oh, that's what you're saying." And there's like light bulb comes on. So that's exactly something that happens in the Torah as well. In a verse like this, where again, you're going to keep, you have to keep the entire Torah, la'asot, and to do it, l'man tichiyun, so that you live, urvitem uvatem v'rishtem et haaretz, you're going to go into the land, you're going to be successful in the land, et haaretz asher nishba Hashem la'avotechem, in that land that Hashem promised to your forefathers. It's interesting. It's not for now. Maybe we'll discuss it in upcoming years, God willing, if we have the opportunity to learn together. It would be nice to talk about how the Or HaChaim understands these verses, especially this verse, in comparison with or in contrast to the last verse. I'll just say it out real quick. The last verse makes it very clear that Hashem made us a promise. He made a promise to our forefathers, and if we've performed the mitzvot, he's going to protect us. Right? Great. So what's this? Is he still protecting us? Because it sounds like you have to do all the mitzvot, and if you don't, then I'm going to take all this away from you. Wait a minute, you promised it to our forefathers. So how is that supposed to work? So the Or HaChaim has a very long, beautiful answer on this. Maybe, God willing, next year we'll get a chance to study it. But that's not where we're at right now. Right now, I'd like to focus our attention to this interesting phrase, Kol ha-mitzvah. Kol ha-mitzvah, all the mitzvah. So it's confusing, and there are different commentaries on this. Rashi, I think we've discussed in previous years, if I'm not mistaken. I might be mistaken. The difficulty in saying all the mitzvah is that the word all implies a mass. It implies that there's a lot. There's all the mitzvah as opposed to some of the mitzvah, right? And mitzvah, because it's not mitzvot, which is plural. Again, we're hearkening back to my earlier discussion about plural and singular, but mitzvah is singular. So all of the mitzvah, do all of the one mitzvah. There's only one mitzvah. There's 613 mitzvot. So why doesn't it say mitzvot here? And if you did want me to, keep one particular mitzvah very, very well, don't say kol, don't all of the mitzvah. Just say do the mitzvah. All of it is implied when you say do it, right? If I tell you to, I don't know, pour a bowl of cereal, that implies all of the ingredients of the cereal, the milk, the spoon, the bowl, all of that's included. If you missed one of those things, then you didn't pour me a bowl of cereal. I don't have to say all of it. Make me an entire bowl of cereal. That doesn't make sense. You will do the entire mitzvah. Doesn't make sense. So it needs interpretation. And for that, we're going to turn today to the powerful wording of the Malbim. And the Malbim is going to deal with an issue that's so fundamental, such an important thing. We don't hear it enough, I think. Hine kvar chakru chachme lev achore. Already, he says, the men of wise hearts, the intelligent men of the past, have already asked this question. Sheri'inu shel Adam v'la Noach tziva rak zayin mitzvot. We know Adam, the first man, and Noach were commanded 7 mitzvot. V'heim hayu maspikim lahasig shlomotam, and that was enough for them to reach their perfection. A bit of introduction, like a one sentence introduction. The Malbim is under the impression, and I think many of us are, that a mitzvah is not just a certain deed Hashem wants us to do. A mitzvah that we're commanded to do brings us to shleimut, brings us to perfection. Our individuality is brought to perfection when we do the mitzvot. So if that's the case, why is it that Adam and Noach were given only 7 mitzvot, and that was enough for them to reach their perfection? Lama hosif liYisrael taryag. How come the Jewish people were given 613 mitzvot? It's not fair. We need 613 to perfect ourselves. We're that much worse than Noach. We're that much worse than Adam. They needed only 7 mitzvot, and all their descendants, all the Gentiles of the world, are perfectly great people and deserve to go to heaven if they perform the 7 mitzvot. And that's not enough for us. Right? And 7 is not good enough for us. We need 613. What's happening? It's not enough for us to do these 7 mitzvot. We need to do all 613. Rak ha'avoda yoter gedol, and it's a lot of work. V'al kain amru miktzat hachachamim. Some of the chachamim, some of these wise people who asked this question, shezeh kedei shehei lahem b'nekel yoter lehisig hashlemut. So some of these ancient thinkers who've asked this question, they give an answer that has to do with, there's 2 doctors, right? One gives a single medication, one kind of medicine, and the other doctor gives a whole, like he's not really sure what it is, or I don't know. He says, take this and that, take a little bit of this, take two of those, call me in the morning. And so it gives a whole slew of pharmaceuticals, right? Which one is making it easier for the patient to heal? For sure. So according to the Malbim's understanding of medicine, the second doctor, because one of those pills will for sure work. Right now, the first doctor who said take this and that'll be enough. We don't know. Maybe it will. Maybe it won't. There's a lot of issues today with people being prescribed medication that was wrong for them, et cetera, has side effects. It might not work. Not going to get into the whole vaccine right now, but not all medicines work 100% on all people the same way. That's just the nature of medicine. So, but the second doctor who just gives them as many medications as he possibly can write onto the prescription pad. So that's gonna work. So he says, no, that answer doesn't work. Now, if we're comparing God to this pharmacist, this doctor, right, who he knows that 7 mitzvot will be enough for the Gentiles. We need 613 because one of these 613 should finally do the trick. That doesn't sound right. That doesn't make God sound like he knows what he's doing, right? Like he's trying to like hedge his bets, give you as many mitzvot as possible just in case. Right? So that's not God. So he says. So he says that he doesn't like that answer. Let's skip down to what he says. Ulam hatshuva b'zeh, the answer to this, she'einu doma lashleimut sheyu mesigim al yidei zayin mitzvot b'nei Noach sheyu rak shleimut l'chayei ha'olam hazeh u'l'chayim hanemusim nusayim. It's a different thing. The 7 mitzvot that the Gentile nations have, it gives them shleimut if they perform them. It gives them completeness. But that completeness is in this world. That completeness is, think about it, and it makes sense. All of these 7 mitzvot have a court system to not murder, to not eat the limb of a living animal. All these 7 mitzvot, I just named 3 of them, right? All these 7 mitzvot of B'nai Noach, all of them have to do with how to live in this world. And if you live like that, if you keep the 7 mitzvot in this world, it'll be a completely different world. It'll be a much more ethical world. But it's all this world, though, right? It's going to be a nicer world. People are going to be more peaceful. They'll be kinder to animals. They're not going to steal. They're not going to, it's going to create a great society, to borrow a phrase from Lyndon Baines Johnson, right? So it's going to make a better world, okay? But it's all this world. The shleimut that the Jewish people want, the shleimut that we aspire to, is not just this world. We want to perfect our soul so that it reaches the highest heights that it can reach after 120 years when we reach the next world. And for that, the 7 mitzvot is not enough, because the 613 mitzvot also have in them, as you can imagine, mitzvot that have nothing to do with this world. Nothing at all. It don't help the world at all that I put on tefillin this morning. Nobody benefited. I gave tzedakah this morning. Okay, so that helps people. There's a mitzvah of tzedakah for Gentiles also, right? So there's I didn't kill anybody this morning. That helps everybody. Okay, nobody died because of me. That's wonderful. All right, pat myself on the back. Okay, one less murder charge. Okay, that's great. So there's fewer court cases, and I don't go to jail, and it's all good. The world is a better place because of that. But it also helps the world to come. And there's other mitzvot I did today that have nothing to do with this world. I wore tzitzit, didn't help the world. Somebody might have taken challah. Okay, in the times of the Beit Hamikdash, when we had kohanim that we gave the challah to, so that helps somebody. I understand, but it's not really a mitzvah of tzedakah to take challah from the bread that you bake. It's a ritual mitzvah, quote unquote. These ritual mitzvot have nothing to do with helping society. They have 100% to do with gaining spiritual strength to take into the world to come. And that's an amazing thing. And that's why the Jewish people have 613 mitzvot instead of just the 7 mitzvot that the Gentile nations have. And that's a fundamental, important idea that I think we're missing out on very often. And I just want to just scroll up a bit to point out to you what exactly indicated to the Malbim the reason that we needed to even ask this question. What's he talking about? What does that have to do with Kol HaMitzvah? Right? So he might say, you might say, right, if that's true, if that's true, then why in the world do we need, didn't other previous generations of Jewish people have the 613 mitzvot? Why didn't Abraham have it? Yitzchak, Yaakov. Hashem promised them the land, right? He promised it to their generations. He didn't say, I'll give you guys the land as long as your descendants do the 613 mitzvot, right? He promised it to them. So how's that fair? And the answer is, what is the land for? The land is for doing the mitzvot, growing, becoming spiritual people. It's not just a gift, an inheritance. Somebody passed away, you get their closet or whatever. That's the TV set goes to Jennifer. That's not what's going on here. We got the land as part of a deal, as part of a brit, as part of a covenant. We have to do our part. We have to want to grow, and the place to grow is the land. As long as we're growing, we're going to be in the land, and it's going to be that kind of relationship where we're benefiting the land, and the land benefits us and helps us grow. And that's why it says here, Kol HaMitzvah, all of one mitzvah, the mitzvah of growing, right? The mitzvah of continuing and persevering and becoming the great people that we're supposed to become. Okay. Let's skip a little bit. So that's the Malbim. You can look at it in more detail on your own if you get a chance. I highly recommend it. Good. Very good, very good. All right. Next piece. We're going to skip a whole 7 verses. Watch out. Seatbelt on, right? Chapter 8, verse 8 in the book of Devarim. Eretz chitos ora v'gefen te'ena v'rimon eretz zayit shemen udvash. And by the way, just so you know, all of these verses that we've studied so far, they're all in the first aliyah. We're barely scratching the surface of everything that's in this parsha. Of course, the first aliyah is this parsha in general. I think I mentioned it last year. Is very top heavy. Like a lot of the main points are in the first few verses. Just an aside here. All right, so this particular verse is important for halachic reasons, as we're about to see. The land is described as a land, right? Eretz, chita of wheat, seora, barley, gefen, which means vines, or particularly specifically grapevines, te'ena, figs, rimon, pomegranate, eretz, again, it's the land of zayit, shemen, udvash, the land of olive trees, and dvash, it's honey. Actually, specifically date honey, but we're not going to get into that now. Now, these 7 foods that are mentioned are not just a coincidence. These are what are called the 7 fruits of Israel. And they require a separate, after blessing, if you eat them in a prepared way: wheat, barley, grapes, figs, pomegranates, olives, and honey, or as I said, dates. So that's the Gemara in Brachot 41a says an interesting thing. It says, Amar Rav Yosef, Item Rabbi Yitzchak. It says Rabbi Yosef, maybe it was Rabbi Yitzchak. Kol hamugdam b'pasuk zeh. Each word, the order of the foods mentioned in this verse, the order mugdam livracha. If they're first in order of the food, they're also first in order of the bracha. I'll explain in a moment. Shene'emar eretz chitos ora gefen te'ena v'rimon Eretz Zayit Shemen Udvash. So again, so the land of wheat, barley, vines, figs, pomegranates, olives, and dates, date honey. Okay, so in other words, the halacha is, and this is actually halacha, that if you eat a food, if you eat one of these 7 foods, or especially if you're eating all of these foods, and you want to know, you want to make a ha'etz, right? The blessing on fruit is ha'etz. Which food should you make the blessing on? So if all things being equal, in other words, if you like all these foods the same, you don't have a personal preference. Personal preference, ironically, it takes precedence here. So if you like, I don't know, pomegranates more than you like any of the other foods, you should make the ha'etz on the pomegranate. Otherwise, you have to go in the order of the foods in this blessing. Now, that's not exactly so simple, because the word eretz, the word land, is used twice in this verse, and that's going to throw this whole idea into the ringer. And that is because the first part of the verse and the second part of the verse are divided by the word eretz. So eretz, the land of Chita Sa'ora Geffen Te'ena V'Rimon. So of those those foods, of those 5 foods, you go in order of the food that's closest to the word eretz. So you go Chita Sa'ora Geffen Te'ena. So wheat, barley, and then it comes the grapevines, figs, and pomegranates. In other words, if you're going to eat something made of wheat, like bread takes precedence over all other things. You're going to make, you have 2 breads in front of you. One is wheat bread and one is barley bread. Assuming you like them equally, you should make the blessing ideally on the wheat, because it's closer to the word eretz. That's how that works. You have grapes, figs, and pomegranates in front of you. Easy. You go with the grapes first. Unless you have a preference, unless you like I said, figs or pomegranates more, then you make the blessing on those. Those are ha'etz. Wheat and barley, depending on how they're cooked, they might be mezonot. It could be hamotzi, right? All right. So we'll get to all that. Okay, so that's the Gemara in Brachot. Now, Rav Yaakov Kamenetsky in Emet Liakov says another very important thing. So first of all, he brings this Gemara. Actually, he brings another Gemara. I don't know why I brought this one. He brings another Gemara. That you can separate this verse into, that's what I was just telling you. So if you have in front of you, you have se'ora and you have zayit, you have in front of you or olives, and you have barley. Which blessing should you say first? So again, because the word eretz, right? Again, let's scroll back. Because it says eretz here, and the next word after it is zayit, which is the olive. So if you have an olive in front of you and you have barley in front of you, and barley is several words away, 2 words away from eretz, right? So the blessing that you would have to make, the priority would be to make the blessing on the olive. That's the Gemara over there. You'd make that ha'etz before you'd make that mezona, in theory. Unless you're eating barley straight, and then you'd make hadama. All right. Anyway, sometimes shahako. We're not going to get into all that though. Sprouted wheat. Okay. So l'chein sheyesh lefanav se'ora zayit mukdem lebracha lezayit. The se'ora hu shnei tevot eretz. Right. As I said, the word se'ora, barley, is 2 words away from eretz, from that first eretz. And zayit he rishon letevat eretz hasheni. Right, the second time it says eretz, the next word is zayit, so that's the olive. Nira shehachiluk b'pasuk hu lefi hanose. So it seems that's the reason why it says the word eretz twice in the verse. But like as many commentaries point out, there might be another reason why it says eretz, the word eretz, twice in this verse. Check this out. It says, Kolomar, the Hachamisha Harishonim, Mayri Kra, Bigedule Hakarka. The first 5 things that are mentioned, that's the wheat, the barley, the grapes, the figs, the pomegranates, they are gdule karka. They're eaten as they grow. You can eat them straight. You don't have to make some sort of product out of them. The hainu, the geffen zeh ha'ilan. Geffen is the actual vine, literally. V'chein te'ena v'rimon zeh ha'ilan. That's also the name of the tree. Masha ein kain zayit. That's different than zayit, which is olive. V'shemen udvash hem haperot atzmam. Remember, the zayit is the fruit that we make olive oil from. We produce something out of it. We don't usually eat. Back in those days, back in the days of the Gemara, they didn't usually eat olives straight. In fact, there's an entire Gemara that says you shouldn't eat olives. Not going to get into it. It affects your memory. Not going to get into that. Olive pizza is fine. It still has the oil. It's fine. So dried olives is definitely a problem according to the Gemara. The oil inside the olives is very important. In fact, Rav Chaim Kanievsky, Zecher Tzadok Levracha, he had a whole list of foods that people should eat if they want to be Talmidei Chachamim, to help them with memory, etc., and certain foods you shouldn't eat. And because of the Gemara, olives were, especially dried olives, were certainly off the list. As long if they have their juice, he said it's fine, if I'm not mistaken. Masha Enkin, Zayed, V'Shem, and Dvash. Dates. Okay? They didn't eat dates straight. They ate the date honey, as we've been saying. In fact, that's what it's called. It's called dvash, honey. It's not called dates in the pasuk itself, in the verse itself. So we're talking about the first foods, the first 5 are products, and the last 2 are byproducts. Right? They are produced from the products. And that's what the verse wants to emphasize. Wants to emphasize the fact that we have a hierarchy. We do in Judaism of food, and part of that hierarchy has to do with the fact that we respect very much the fact that foods are produced. We want foods to be produced. We want to make new foods and put spices into new things and try new things. That's good. Hashem made the world for us to do that. If you recall, we spoke previously many weeks ago now, back in Parshat Naso. We talked about how the Nazir had to bring a korban chatat. He brought a sin offering. And Rashi, at least, and many others say the reason he brought a sin offering is because he abstained from God's world. God made this beautiful world with these delicious foods and all these things. And what's the Nazir doing? He's saying, no, I'm not going to eat this. Who said he shouldn't eat this? Who said you shouldn't eat grapes? Who said you shouldn't drink wine? God gave this to you for you to eat. Make use of it. Everything has a use. Everything. Just recall, you went to a school, so it's worth mentioning. Rav Samson Raphael Hirsch was famous towards, pretty close to his retirement. He went on a trip to the Alps, to Switzerland, and everybody was like so surprised. This is Rav Samson Raphael Hirsch, who's, when he's not busy, lecturing the community about what they should be doing, he's writing, he's philosophizing, he's thinking, he's busy. What's he doing? Taking a vacation, go to the Alps. He never took a vacation. So when he came back, they asked him why he did it. He said, after 120 years, after I go, I'm going to go up to heaven, and Hashem's going to say, Nu Shamshon, did you see my Alps? How am I going to answer him? God created the Alps for us to see it. He didn't create it just for it to be there. You want to go somewhere, it's very important Jewish philosophy. You should have no regrets. Obviously, you shouldn't try things that you shouldn't do. Right? Well, let's experiment with things like cocaine. No, I'm not saying that. Right? Don't like try every single avera because it's there. That's not the point. The point is that if something is given and it's kosher, God gave His hechsher. That means if it's something you want to do, don't regret not doing it. Find a way to do it. It's very important. Anyway, so that's why we have such respect for byproducts. So even they have their own hierarchy of how and when to say it, how and when to say the blessing. So, oh, good. This verse, which is the next verse, I looked for commentaries here. Nobody seems to say this, but it happens to be this verse and the last verse we just learned, obviously, and actually a few verses in this area have the word eretz twice in the verse anyway. So it might be a stylistic thing, not just a way to learn out halacha and other things, but as you'll see here, also the word eretz is used twice. So the verse says, Eretz asher lo b'miskenut tochal ba lechem lo techzar kol ba eretz, again eretz asher avanecha barzel meharecha tachtzov nechoshet, a land where you can eat food without stop. The land will be so blessed that you'll have endless amount of food. You'll have no problems. You'll have all the food you need. And then it says, Tochal ba lechem, you're going to be able to eat lechem, lo techsar, the bread will not lack anything, won't have anything missing. Kol ba eretz, anything that the land, the asher avaneha barzel, this all is going to happen in this land where the stones are barzel, are iron, they're strong, we've got good stones. Right, and the hills, you're going to be able to find copper. So again, you're going to be able to mine things, and you're going to be able to be successful. It's a land that is able to support itself. It's not going to need international exports and stuff like that. It's a self-contained unit, right? Like scuba, self-contained underwater breathing apparatus. All right. So says the Chida, he writes in Pnei David that this idea that bread isn't lacking anything. Weird. Okay. Yeah, my computer is not lacking anything either. It makes lots of noises. All right. So sorry about that. So the he brings in the Pnei David that he heard an interesting idea of what it means that the bread in Israel won't lack anything. And this is a great Devar Torah for the seminaries are starting now, and bread is a popular food in the yeshivas and seminaries in Israel. All right. So Eretz asher lo miskenut tochal ba lechem lo techzar kol ba eretz asher avanecha. So he quotes the verse. Eretz asher lo miskenut tochal ba lechem lo techzar kol ba shamati be Katnoti. I heard from somebody from Katnot. What is that? Katnot is yes. From it's I think Beknoti Mishem Chachme Mikashtil. So I heard it said from the wise people of Castile, Spain, right? A city in Spain. Davar pashut, it's a simple thing. Kihine ha'ani merod ochel lechem levado, ki ein lo lipatan lemalot nafsho ki ra'av yochel lachmo. A poor person might eat bread all by itself. Why? Why isn't he going to put bologna on it? Why isn't he going to put corned beef? Why isn't he putting brisket on his bread? He can't afford it. He's a poor man. So he's going to eat bread alone sometimes. Okay? Amnam be'eretz Yisrael, hayasafa rav b'chol od zod yitera, ki halechem haya kolkach muta'am me'od she'ein tzarech lepatan. The bread is going to be so delicious. It's going to be so perfect. It's going to completely satisfy every single nutritional need that it needs to have, that you don't need to put anything on it. It's delicious by itself. The bread isn't missing anything. That's what the verse is saying. The bread is perfect in and of itself. It has the nutritional value, and it's going to have protein, and it's going to have potassium, and it's going to all the things. Obviously, bread doesn't normally have these things, right? It's just pure carbohydrates. So besides that, it's going to have all the other nutritional value that bread doesn't have nowadays, and that's why you'll be able to eat bread by itself. You won't need anything else. Nothing's going to be missing. It's going to have everything in it. So a beautiful idea from the Chachamim of Castile. And now we're going to skip all the way from chapter 9 to chapter 10, verse 12. Whew. I'm telling you, a lot of skipping today. V'ata, and this is with an ayin, so it's not ata with an aleph, which means you. Ata means now. V'ata Yisrael, ma Hashem Elokecha shoel mimah. Very important verse here. What is it that Hashem wants from you? What does Hashem want? Narrow it down. What is it? What does Hashem want? This verse, by the way, this is it. This is almost a whole Torah in one verse. All right. If all you're looking for is what Hashem wants from you, this is it. Of course, it needs explanation, so you'll need the rest of the Torah for that. But ki im liyira et Hashem elokecha. Hashem wants you to fear Him, have awe of Him, lalechet b'chol derachav, to walk in all of His ways. It means to act like Him, as Rashi says. Li'ava oto, to love Him. Easy, right? It's easy to love, invisible, all-powerful beings. La'ava oto, la'avod et Hashem elokecha b'chol levavecha b'chol nafshecha, to serve Hashem with all of your heart and with all your soul. Simple, right? That's all we need. You got this. All right, we can go on. We don't really need any commentary on that verse, right? All right. So next verse. No, I'm kidding. So in commentary to that verse, we're going to go to, that's right, Rav Shamshon Raphael Hirsch. He says, Ata Yisrael, the foregoing has made it clear to you all that all of your future happiness depends solely on your faithfully carrying out what God requires of you. But what is it that God requires of you? Sha'al miyimach. What does He ask of you? Maki'im. All you have to do is this. What other than? So from the accentuation, it appears, and this has to do with the trup. I'm not going to get into details, but the accent marks and the trups have indication of what a verse means. So he says here, from the accentuation, it appears that liyira, to fear, lalechet, to follow, le'ava, to love, are not three separate requirements, but rather lalechet and le'ahava, to go and to love, are the consequences of liyira. Fearing God means that you will love Him and follow after His ways. It's A equals B plus C. It's not A plus B plus C. It's A equals B plus C. To fear God, to have awe of Him, means not just like you're saying, "Oh, I love God. Oh, God is so important." God, you can give Him a lot of lip service. A lot of people have in the last several thousand years. That's not what we're looking for. We're looking for people who are going to follow after His ways and love Him. We are to fear God in such a way that our fear of God will lead us to walk in all His ways, and in turn will lead us to love God. For yira et Hashem, fear of Hashem, means to be ever mindful of God in all His greatness and majesty. As he says in other places, here they quote his commentary in Bereshit 2:19, Shemot 25, etc. Lalechet b'chol derachav, to go in all of His ways. And yirat Hashem, this fear of God, this awe of God, should induce us to strive for all the goals to which He has shown us the way. The unfolding of all our energies in the presence of God toward the attainment of the goals He has set for us and in the ways He has taught us will make us happy. That's it. What makes us happy? Getting everything God said He'd give us when we do what we said we would do for Him. These goals and these ways suit our true natures, which God created for those goals and ways. He created our nature to love the things that He's going to give us, that it's going to be our reward. We naturally love those things. The feeling of living and accomplishing life's purpose before the eyes of God brings such a sense of elation that the very act of following God's ways leads to the love of God, Ahavat Hashem, and one who loves God knows no greater joy than Ahavat Hashem, to devote oneself to God and to sense that one is close to Him. One of the things I love about that phrase, by the way, if I may, we're getting short on time. We have at least one other comment I'd like to get to today. There's this misconception that outside of Hasidic Judaism is dry and dull and without emotion, without energy, without love, without joy. Let's give it a word. Without simcha. So the Hasidim focus on simcha. Everybody else just focuses on halacha, this, that, the other thing. I want to read you this phrase again. The feeling of living and accomplishing life's purpose before the eyes of God brings such a sense of elation, that's joy, that the very act of following God's ways leads to the love of God. You're feeling alive, makes you feel happy. That's the joy. Yes, Hasidim have joy and love of Hashem. I'm not putting anything down. But Misnagdim do too. And Yekis, this is Rav Hirsch, the Yekis have it too. Right? Just because they do everything in a very set way and they're always on time doesn't mean that they don't love and they don't have joy. They enjoy being on time. Okay. I don't know how else to put it. They have a smile on their face when everything goes, according to the way Hashem wanted it to go, and we can make that happen, and that's what makes them happy. That's what makes all of us happy. That is what happiness is. He writes more on this, but I'd like to, as soon as possible, skip to the last verse, because the last, pretty much the end of this week's parsha deals with the second paragraph of the Shema, and we already talked about Birkat HaMazon and how that's obviously an important thing. And if you look at last year's class, we focused quite a bit on it, if I'm not mistaken. So let's get to the Shema. And as promised, we're going to have an issue of singular and plural grammar here. So in the Shema it says, and this is about the mitzvah of the mezuza, it says, Uchetavtam, and you will write, but it ends with a mem, so that means who's going to write? You, plural or singular? Uchetavtam. There you go, you're right, plural, Uchetavtam. Y'all are going to write mezuzas, all right? You, plural, are going to write mezuzot. Uchetavtam al mezuzot beitecha uvisharecha. And you're going to put them on your house and on your gates. And the English translation does not do this justice, because you don't know if that's singular or plural, do you? But beitecha is singular, your house. Visharecha, your gate, one person. Mezuzot is plural. Okay, so there's halacha. You're not supposed to just have one mezuzah in your house. All right. So maybe, right? So maybe, but uchtavtam, y'all are gonna write, and then you're gonna put these mezuzahs where? On one house. Like a studio apartment, exactly. So, yeah, right. So you might have to only have one mezuzah, unless you exit through the fire escape on a regular basis. Anyway, I'm not going to get into all that. So, yes, exactly. You read my mind. All right. So, yeah, there's a whole separate issue if you're jumping out the window on a regular basis. All right. What are you running away from? Okay. So in it smells so good here. In Tam V'dat, if you can hear my voice over my stomach, so in Tam V'dat is written by Rav Moshe Sternbach, who, by the way, according to, was still Baruch Hashem alive and well, and he's considered the main. He is basically the main posek, the main halachic decider that people go to nowadays. Now that Rav Chaim Kanievsky is gone, so and we've been quoting Rav Moshe Sternbach for years. And Baruch Hashem, we recognized then how great he would become. I'm kidding. He was great then too. So let's. So he writes, "Ktav, ktav, uchtav tam beloshen yachid." Ktav tam, right? Is I'm sorry. Yeah. Uchtav tam beloshen. It says beloshen yachid. He says it's tia uchtav tam.
Oh, it could be a mem over here doesn't make it plural.
Yeah. All right. Sorry. So we were all wrong. Let's go back. We're not going to. Yeah. But the next verse, v'tiach haschar b'loshen rabbi, the reward for making mezuzot, that what's not in this verse is going to be in plural, in order that your days be multiplied, etc., etc. So, right. So the commandment is individual. The reward is plural. L'man yirbu yemechem, as it says, so that you will yemechem, your days, right? I said that all wrong. Lehorot ki hayachid shekuba mezuza el petach beito. What's this trying to teach you? Beautiful lesson. An individual who puts a mezuzah on his house, umachriz et al yahaduto b'far hesia v'enu mitbayesh b'zeh, and he does it publicly and he's not embarrassed to do it. Ki ilu hanashim she'az chaftzam hadmut legoyim chas v'shalom nimtzahu mora umaske ed harabim lishmor mitzvotav al derech. So v'yigba libo derech Hashem. He inspires others to do the same thing. He puts on a mezuzah on his house. Other people are going to put mezuzahs on their house too. I was just at a funeral just yesterday, and one of the things that was mentioned was that the person who passed away was instrumental in making sure that there'd be a mikvah in San Diego. Right? She called people. She fundraised for it. Obviously, costs money, etc., etc. As some of you might know, that's one of my goals for this community, to have a mikvah here. It's kind of important. There's some opinions that say there's no such thing as a community unless you make a mikvah there first. Right? That's a priority. That's like number one on the list. Yeah, how do you define a community? Okay. It's a halachic issue. Not going to get into it, but I hear. But if you want to grow a community, for sure, you want young families, and they need a mikvah. And there's going to be times that they're going to have to go to mikvah on Shabbat. And that's, if it's not within walking distance, it's going to be a problem. They shouldn't be pushing off the mikvah night. Anyway, not going to get into the halacha there either. That's a separate issue. So this lady whose funeral was yesterday, might as well we could say her name. It's not embarrassing. Arlene Schloss funeral was yesterday. And she called people to raise money, and she called her friends in San Diego, and they didn't know what a mikvah was. Like, we're giving money for what now? What are you collecting money? Mitzvah, mikvah. What now? So she had to explain it, and because she explained it, more people went to the mikvah. They knew what it was now. They thought it was a cool idea. Maybe they recognize how holy it is. Whatever it is. It's the experience of going to mikveh is I'm going to say from a man's point of view. I'll tell you, when I go to the mikveh, it's inspiring. It's uplifting. Any mikveh. Yeah. But yeah, I thought so too. The Ariz mikveh. You want to jump out of the mikveh? That's the one. I couldn't even do it 3 times in there. It was freezing cold. I felt my heart stop beating. That was a one-time experience. All right. So again, he says that when somebody cares about other people, the actions of that person aren't an individual action anymore. Just like we said in the beginning, the Jewish people, when they do the mitzvot, when they listen to the Torah, they're not just different people. They're all one person. One person, when he does the mitzvot and inspires others to do it, he's not an individual anymore. He's become the majority. He's become the group. He's melted into the group. There's a Gemara, he quotes this Gemara in Ta'anit 9a. You learned Ta'anit, right? I think you learned Ta'anit. Yeah, so there's a Gemara there. It talks about Moshe, that Moshe was never called a private person. It says, Einin nikra yachid. He wasn't called a yachid. Why? Kevan shelirabim hu bai kerabim dami. Somebody who acts for the community becomes the community. Moshe Rabbeinu was the community. He wasn't an individual anymore, and he didn't want to be. Right? It's not like people cry nowadays. Oh, I lost my individuality. I'm not. How do I know who I am anymore? You know who you are. You are when you are the community that you make. You make a community. That's who you are. That grows you. That's much better than any individual. You know how many billions and billions, trillions of individuals have come and gone in the history of mankind. You don't know all of their names, but you might know some communities. You might know some societies. You remember the names, of great people who've done great things for others, and that's how you make your mark. That's how you gain some sort of individuality. It's not through the crazy ideas that the society is telling you nowadays. You want to be an individual, join the Jewish people, become us, do the right thing. All right, I'm going to end the class with that. Everybody should have a good week. And if you have any questions, I'll